Hello and welcome to the graphic design studio here at my work. We're going to print this image on a variety of, well, actually a couple other images too, on a variety of materials today. And the first item we're going to be looking at is getting out a print on metal. And then we're going to do one on a cloth, a lens cloth, and a mouse pad. Now I've also got a couple of other images I want to do because I really still am testing the process here, and I want to be able to get everything going just get it right for the color and everything as we are looking at doing this for the students next quarter, at least officially speaking. So let's get right to it. All right, with this image that I'm doing here, I actually have it cropped square so that I can print it out and put it on the cloth. This is gonna be on a lens cloth. The lens cloth is about 12 inches square, and so I'm just gonna put this right in the middle, or maybe I'll offset it so it looks more like a Polaroid or whatever like that. But I'm gonna put it right in the middle, and since I'm limited to letter size in my printing, I figured I'm just gonna go about 8 inches, and then this is actually technically 8.2 if you wanted to get into the nitty gritty of it. So I'm going to go about 8 inches, and then I'm going to also print 8x10s for some of these other items. Oh, I also have a mouse pad that I'm going to be able to do. So I have quite a bit that I can do, and I'm just going to take you through the steps one by one. The first thing to know, we are going on an Epson F170. We've got this little printer because I went to a trade show, Printing United, in Las Vegas in October of 2022, and I came across this thing. I don't know why I didn't even know it existed, but I came across this thing on the trade show floor, and I was just, basically you could say I was smitten, because we've got a dye-sub printer that is small enough and affordable enough for me to put here in the lab and for the students to use, and for me to get all jazzed about dye-sub again. And it's easy to use. I knew, being that it was an Epson, it would be easy to use. So let's walk through some of these print settings, and I'm going to go through in detail as I do some of these print settings. I'm going to talk through the details of what I have found out to be the thing that works best for me. Now, another thing that I want to really stress when it comes to printing, the idea of variables, I want to eliminate them as much as possible. And the problem with dye sublimation printing is variables is the name of the game. Whether it's the substrate you're going onto, whether it's a mug, the cloth, any substrate that you're going to end up going onto, that will affect the color, at least in some way, shape, or form. Then you also have the transfer sheet that you have to deal with. So we're going to look at all of these different items, but it all comes down to something here in the computer that is actually very familiar and very welcoming to someone like me who likes to print big with my photos, whether it's on the big 44-inch size, maybe a 13x19 size printer. I like to go through Photoshop. And when I had the previous dye-sub printer, it was by Sawgrass. Now, it was tabloid in size, which is great. I wish Epson would make a tabloid size printer for dye-sub. But with that Sawgrass, it was just a pain in the rear because everything was just customized. Everything was proprietary. And it was just like knocking my head against a brick wall trying to get that color to behave and to do what I want it to do. With this little Epson, I actually have ICC profiles, which is amazing. So let's take a look at that now. I have the print dialog box open, and we're going to get this item out on the printer, of course. Photoshop managing colors, which is definitely what we want to do when we have the opportunity to do that. I have done this with a printer managing colors, and it's just not the same. We've got it really dialed in with the manufacturer provided profiles, which is great for sure. All right, we have two profiles that came with this item, the rigid and the textile. Now, here's the thing I was talking about with this whole notion of variables. When we have these two different items to go to, it only gives us the idea of a rigid material or a textile, a soft material. And the description that I was able to read about told me basically the idea of the rigid, it doesn't put the ink down as thickly as the textile does. So when you choose textile, it delivers more ink. All right, so when I did that, the first time I was testing it with the textile, or the rigid, excuse me, the image just came out a little bit light. It came out a little bit just not as rich as I wanted it to be. The color was pretty much on, but it was still just kind of pale. So I went with my rigid panels, I went with a textile, and I really liked the results. Now off of this printer, when we were going onto the mouse pad and the cloth, the lens cloth, these will be items that I have never printed before on this printer, so we're just going to see what happens and we'll see how this goes. All right, so our first step here is to select the proper profile. I'm going to continue using the textile profile even for the rigid items because it just delivers results that are a little better. Now with more testing, of course, I can probably dial in that rigid item, but I have to think about what are my variables. We will get to those. I don't want to overload us right now, but we're going to get to those as we step through this process. All right, I'm going to go to print settings. This is going to be, there's not very many options to select on this, which is probably a good thing. All right, certainly letter size, paper is what we're going to be printing to. And then as far as my layout, I'm going to go down here to print settings. I just want to choose the same thing here. So basically the media type is going to go on the textile media type. Now really the difference in the media as it relates to the printer is nothing. There is a transfer sheet that it prints to. And so we're going to print to that first, and then we're going to move on, of course, with cooking the image onto the material. All right, let's go ahead and hit save here, and then we'll hit print here. All right, the machine is doing its duty, it's doing its thing. Now, as you look at that, I don't know what you're going to be able to tell here on this look, on this screen, whatever you want to call it, on this view that we have in the video. It is pale. The colors look completely off. And one of my students, when I was given this sample in class, noted that and was just like, those greens are really pale. I'm like, I know, it's going to be okay. This is a whole part of the process. So let's not worry about that so much. We're just going to keep moving forward with it. And so now it is time to grab a few of these others. So I'm gonna print this image from Dubrovnik. Now I've cropped it to 8x10 because that's what I have available to me with a little bit. So it's actually 8.2 inches by 10.2 inches. So I have a little bit of a bleed so that we can cover everything. And let's go ahead and print that out. And there we have the whole image, and we'll just get that printed. All right, so this other image that has some blue and some greens in it, I'm gonna get this going on the panel as well. Now, one thing about these metal panels, these are Chromolux panels, and they are just gorgeous. They really deliver. Oh, let's look at this. We want Photoshop manages colors. Oh, for some reason, this wants to go to the 4900. That's weird. So we're gonna do Photoshop manages colors, and then we're gonna go up here to the textile. And perceptual, that was another thing I forgot to mention. The perceptual was recommended by the manufacturer. I have not done the tests to see what is different here between perceptual and relative. So I'm just going off of what the manufacturer recommends. Let's make sure over here, since this messed up, yep, we got that right. There we go. There it is. All right, so I wanted to print this one because it has both the greens and the blues with it. I have printed some that have some warm colors, so that's where that Dubrovnik image has some warm colors. I mean, take a look at this one, this Dubrovnik image now. That is really pale. The color is just really faded back. And it just, that's basically the life of it. That's what it looks like. That's how it behaves, but that's the way I can put it anyway. All right, so I'm gonna make this one also into a mouse pad. So I'm gonna go ahead and print this one again, actually. I should have just told us to do 2 copies before, but I'll just print this one again and make this one into a mouse pad. We can also do mugs and water bottles. We've got the cooker, the heater, the whatever the thing is, the press. We've got the material to do that. I just don't have any blanks for doing a mug. I really wanted to do a mug today, but I couldn't find any blanks. But I got plenty of aluminum water bottles. And there's just a variety of different things that you can put your images onto when you have a dye sublimation printer. So I think I've got it all printed for what I want. Now it's time to put these onto the material and get it going with just applying those items so we can then take it over to the heat press and get them onto the heat press and get it going that way. All right, let's go over to that table and get this process continued. All right, when it comes to these Chromolux items, they come in packs of 10, and it's got a nice orange covering on it to protect it from the scratches and other things like that. It is on there really good, and there's no overlap, so you have to have some good fingernails and patience to get that thing peeled off there like you need it. There we go. Usually a good idea to go ahead and take a soft rag and wipe it just to make sure you don't have any dust on there. And then I'm going to take my print. So I'll take the Dubrovnik print, and then I'm going to place it upside down right there, and now I need to tape it into position. So we use this thermal tape. This stuff does not get affected by the heat, and so we're going to keep it in position using a couple of inches worth of the thermal tape. And it's enough if I just do it on one side. I don't need to get all crazy with the amount of tape going on. All right, that first one is ready to go, ready for pressing in the heat press. When it comes to doing the cloth, I don't need to tape it on there. So that's going to be a different issue. So I'm just going to put that together with the cloth. This one is going to be for the mouse pad. So I'll just put that together with the mouse pad. And then I'm going to go ahead and see what this looks like on the Chromolux. Now these Chromolux panels, they are about $10 a piece, so they're rather expensive as far as just a base substrate is concerned. They also come in a boatload of sizes. I'll show you a little bit here while I'm going through trying to get this stupid thing off the website. They've got some panoramas, so some 5 by 10 inches, some 4-inch squares, some other sizes that are squares. Just a lot of variety of different sizes for these. And now the printer also, it will do legal size printing. And one panel that I would love to get is they've got a 6 by 12. I think that would be amazing. Okay, ready to go with all of these items. Let's head on over to the heat press and get them cooked on there. So here we are at the heat press. The way it goes is you put the material in there, you cook it for a period of time, and then you remove it, of course, and it's done. Of course, it's going to be very hot when it's done, so we definitely want to be careful with what we're doing, with how we're shifting things around. This has to be at 385 degrees, and it's going to cook on there for about 90 seconds. So this is timed, it's ready to go. I also have the pressure just right for putting in a panel. When I do the cloth, I have to put in something else, so I'll be changing the machine so I can get it just right for doing the cloth. All right, so let's go ahead and put in one of these panels. So this one is going to be the Dubrovnik Old Town. And the biggest reason I wanted to do this image was because it has warm hues and those significant deep blues. I wanted to see how that comes out. All right, we'll put it in here. I've also tested already a little bit as far as where is the best place to put the material, whether I put it right in the center. On this press, it's actually better if I put it back a little bit. Also, I don't have what they call a parchment paper. We have this item that I could overlay, but what I've determined is the case, when I put this on there, it just doesn't get enough of the heat transferred. So I could either bump this up to maybe 400 degrees and use this item, but I've gotten really good results of just putting it in straight just like it is. However, I have forgotten one thing. I do want to put this item in there because you can see I've done it before with my tests, and what we're looking at here is that roughly 1/10 of an inch overlap that the paper has on the metal. And I want to put that in there because I simply don't want all that ink to transfer onto the bed here. I have to have something where it just keeps the bed clean. All right, we are ready to go. This is in there and it's time to go. So I've got a little bit of an electromagnetic piece here that once the clock is done, that will release and then the clamshell thing just opens. And there's our print. It is ready to be removed from the heat press, and I'll just put it over here. And we'll just go right in and get the next one going. All right, so here's my image from the Palouse that is going to go on the Chromolux panel. All right, let's take a look at this one and basically peel it back. Of course, the panel itself is going to be very hot still. And that is a nice rich blue for sure. You know what I also forgot to do? I forgot to mirror the image. Oh my goodness, it's one of those settings that is supposed to be there, always on by default. And for some reason on this image, it did not mirror the image. And so that is just a really stupid mistake. I can't. Anyway, as we look at the quality of the print, I get closer and I'm looking at what's going on here. I do have a little bit of a fading of some sort over here. Basically, I noticed that the paper had wrinkled a little bit. It's either due to how I had taped it on, or something because I had let it sit there for a little while as under the heat as I was jibber jabbering, and it caused a little wrinkle in the whole thing. So that could be, basically that could be the problem of what's going on there with how that came through. But again, the mirroring, it's totally off. I'm going to throw this away. It's just terrible because I know it's not right, and that's, yeah, it feels like a rookie mistake, and it probably is because I'm pretty new at this. All right, so this Palouse one, oh, that's very nice. Also not mirrored. Again, I don't know why that was not an automated thing. It usually is, where it's just an automated setting where it makes sure that you mirror the image. Now this one is not as critical that it be mirrored because it's a natural object, of course, the tree and whatnot. Certainly I know that it's not right. But, well, people that are familiar with this subject will know that it's not right. But the colors are phenomenal. I really love the colors and how they're coming out on this particular print. So that's really cool. And we're going to take a quick look at that color profile, and we're going to see exactly what's going on in just a little bit. We're going to hop back in the computer and we're going to figure that out and see just what's going on with how many colors we can expect to get out of this machine. All right, let's take a look at doing some soft goods now. So this whole idea of doing the mouse pad, I don't think I need to do any adjustments in the pressure of the device because this is relatively thin, and I don't know, I think it'll be okay. Again, it's not reversed. Oh, I feel so silly. One thing we want to make sure is that we get it aligned right. You can see I've got a lot more overlap over here, so I'm going to make sure I don't crop off that tree. I probably should have taped this on, but it'll be all right. Since this is a little thicker, I'm going to go ahead and feel comfortable placing it in the center. Now, this is also the first time that I have done this. It has a little more pressure on it because of the thicker material. So hopefully that will help get a little more of that ink onto the substrate, onto the material. If it comes off and it's a little bit odd on the color, it's a little bit weak, a little bit thick, who knows what's going to happen here, we'll just use this as a learning tool, a learning idea. And the variables we have available to us is the temperature and the length of time that it cooks on there. So if it's a little bit weak, one thing we can do, rather than go to Photoshop and darken the image, let's say, I don't want to do that. I would rather work my process so that what I see on screen is what I expect to see here. And that perfectly happened with this image when we're looking at the panel. From what I saw on screen to what I see here, this is actually very, very accurate. But when I go onto the mouse pad, I have no idea what's going to happen because this is the first time I've done it with this printer, with these transfer sheets. Everything is brand new here for going on the mouse pad. So we're just going to see what happens, and we'll learn from there, and we'll go with it. It's almost done, so it'll pop up here shortly. All right, so as far as an intensity of the color and intensity of the image, it's actually about what I expected it to be. You can kind of see it smoking a little bit. It's about what I expected it to be, what I hoped it would be. The blacks are not as rich as what you get on the panel for sure, the glossy panel for sure. That's to be expected, I think, being that this is a matte surface and a cloth surface. So I think that's to be expected. But as it relates to what I would consider color calibration and things like that, I was really concerned about the density of this bright area here, and it came in just like I wanted it to, just as I expected it to. So this, I would say, is a beautiful image, a beautiful print. I did not crop off the tips of the tree or on either side there, so things are looking really good. And you can see also on here how much of that ink has transferred. So we've got over here the difference here where we lose out on the ink. Technically, I could print this again. It'll just be a lot weaker. All right, now it's time to do our cloth. And so when we do the cloth, we're going to use this little pillow underneath. And in doing so, I really need to adjust the tension. So I'm going to loosen this up a bit here. And since that electromagnetic item does not have a release button that I can hit, which is stupid. All right, that's good. But I had to turn it off and turn it back on again so that it would release the magnet and I can just get right to it. All right, so here, the square item is what I was gonna do, and here is my cloth. Now, the cloth, the problem, of course, is it's wrinkly. We do not want those wrinkles to come through in the image. Also, on this particular cloth, there's some kind of, I don't know what that is, but Secure Max TM is what it says. It's kind of embedded in the fabric. So I want to be thinking about that too as I place my image. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in there, and then I can gently press this without activating that magnet. Now the timer's going, that's fine. That'll help me know that I've got about, I don't know, 10 seconds worth, 15 seconds worth of just kind of ironing it, just kind of pressing it, so that a few things are going to happen. Number one, the excess moisture that might be in there is going to be cooked out. Number two, we're going to get rid of those wrinkles. And I'm going to move that back just a wee bit. I wasn't pressing hard enough, so I might have to go ahead and put full-on pressure so it gets to the magnet, but I think this is going to work. Do about another 10 seconds so I can get all of the wrinkles out of it. All right, that's real nice. Now I do see some slight wrinkling happening. I'm gonna go ahead and be really picky. These things are hot. Now I can see a problem on this side. I have some set off, what I call set off. It looks like there was some residue from a previous job that was done, and it had either been on, yeah, it was on this surface here, because it's now there, and this is the back of it. So hopefully that won't set off. Here, I'll shift it this way. Hopefully it won't set off again. So that the problem we had there was someone had overprinted something and put this under it without a protective liner. So that's too bad. Okay, so those wrinkles are effectively out. There's still a few minor ones there, but it is what it is. I'm gonna run with it, especially since this is really just a test, but there's not much more I can do there. All right, so I want to get these aligned, or this, I should say, aligned. Now I mentioned I might put it up a little bit towards the top to make it feel a little bit more Polaroid-esque. Problem with that is I have my edges still here as well, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and target just the middle as best as possible. Now I am just eyeballing it. And I have to be careful too as I move this around. If this paper heats up, it's going to soften that ink and it's going to start transitioning to the fabric. Don't want to do that, so I just need to move quickly. All right, so now we'll leave the same time. I did not look up any recommended settings for these cloths, because these cloths I literally just bought on Amazon. Any type of microfiber cloth, any type of, what's the word I'm looking for? Polyester. Any type of non-natural fiber is going to work super well for you, and that will be what you need for printing onto. So it could be a shirt, could be anything that you want to do. The thing you want to look for is just that it is a light colored, white in this case is good, but also that it is not a natural fiber. So cotton and any of those types of things you're not going to be able to do. All right, so we'll get this thing. We'll let this thing run, and then we'll take a look when it's done. All right, it lifted the paper up with the platter thingy, whatever you want to call it. Let's move that off to the side. All right, again, not mirrored. I still can't believe I did that, but whatever. All right, the tonality is looking really good. I'm really pleased with that, with how that came through. So the bottom line is, this is an amazing machine. And the color coming off of it is predictable. I love when I can predict things and get things looking the way I expect them to look. I need to mirror it, of course, and I'll show you that in a moment. But otherwise, it's rich color, it's clean color, crisp results. I just did not get this with the sawgrass that I was dealing with, in part because it was a proprietary system. Everything was proprietary about it. And also extremely expensive. The costs on this to run is going to be about 25% of what it costs to run the sawgrass. So I'm just thrilled about the opportunities here. So let's head on back to the computer. There's a few more things I want to take a look at with you. I'm going to show you this mirroring thing I'm talking about, and then we're going to dive into this color profile and really see exactly what we're dealing with as it relates to expectations and what's happening when we come through this whole process. I'm going to then get one more print of that Dubrovnik image with it mirrored properly, because I really want that image on the Chromolux, but it's got to be right. I'll use that as a class example, but I can't put that on display for myself. I'll just always be looking at that and say, "Ah, stupid me." All right, back to the computer. Okay, here we are back at the computer, and this is the image I wanted to print off, and we're going to mirror it so that, one, it transfers over, of course, like we have been doing. So let's get over here to Photoshop Manages Color, and we're going to go back here to Textile, and we're going to come over here, and we're going to, now see here it says flip horizontally, so I would have assumed that that was what I need, but it also says mirror image here. So what I think might be the case are these things conflicting with each other. So let's go back here to Layout, let's turn this one off. That still is doing its thing, and when I come over here and I go to Print Settings, Mirror Image, take that off, it didn't change my preview here at all. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this one off, and I will make sure this one is on. And I'll just need to make sure that I think about these things when I get the print out. All right, so let's go ahead and get this printing. And then while that's printing, I'm going to show you the stuff I wanted to compare in the profile. So when I open up Color Sync Utility, I am able to get an idea here on just what we're dealing with. I have to find my right profiles though. Here they are. Here are the profiles that I want to deal with. All right, so the textile is the one that we've been using. So let's go ahead and use this one. And so as I rotate this around, let's see if I can get this to be any bigger. Yes, love it big. As I rotate this around, I get a sense for exactly what is going on with the color. I get a feel for this is the areas, these are the colors that are defined that are reproducible on this machine. Now this is purely a CMYK ink machine. There's no additional photocyans or anything like that. It's just CMYK. So if I right click on this and I say hold for comparison, I'm going to then be able to select the sRGB, the standard sRGB color space. Look how much bigger that sRGB color space is. Now this printer can get a few colors down here in these ranges that sRGB cannot take a look at. So these kind of teal type, cyan type, whatever colors. And then some of these yellows and reds and such it can also grab. Let's invert this. So let's clear comparison. And so on the sRGB, I'm going to hold this for comparison. And then I'm going to go and select the textile one, so we can get a feel for where that intersection is. And so we look at this, at least I look at this, and I'm like, how in the world can we get a decent image out of this printer when the color space is so restricted? And this is the case for any CMYK printing. The color space is so restricted. But you can see here, whatever it does with these blues and these greens and those green-yellow colors, when it chops those off, it is just simply leaving alone the color that exists, the color that remains, shall we say, is untouched. That's why we used perceptual. If you remember, we were in Photoshop, we used the rendering intent of perceptual. So what that does is, when we have a color in the sRGB that's way out here, now just so you know, when I exported these images from Lightroom, I did have Lightroom convert them to the sRGB color space. So when we have a color that's way out here, we then are able to tell Photoshop with using the perceptual, if it exists outside of this color gamut, outside of this color space, we want you to simply just chop that off and assign that color to the closest value it can. And so if it's out here, it'll just go, it'll chop it off like a guillotine, and it'll map it to this color out here, which is the closest rendering of a dark blue that it can do. If we were to have used relative, what it would have done was it would have taken all these values out here and all the values at the center line, which is no saturation at all, and it would compress it like a spring. So every single color would then get compressed down. So they stay relative to each other, but every color is then modified. So the beautiful thing about perceptual is there's no colors that are modified except those that are outside of that color space anyway. So here we have it. This is mirrored. This is exactly what we need, because once it goes back onto it, it gets mirrored again. So this is precisely what we need for that. All right, let's look at this one other way in Photoshop. Again, this is sRGB image, so we already are starting on a very truncated value. When we go here to view and we go to gamut warning, well, here, let's do our proof setup. We're going to go to custom. And when I do this, my device to simulate, I want to simulate the device that I'm printing to. And when I'm in the print dialog box, it's way at the top. So I figured this would be way at the top as well. But it is not. So I'm going to be looking for, right there, the textile. And then we're going to go with perceptual, because that's what we've been printing to. All right, so what we're going to look at then is view, and I'm going to show gamut warning. And so what's interesting is Photoshop is telling me that these blues are actually compressed enough already that I'm not really losing anything. So I have, what I have is a fairly decent rendition on screen. What I should be able to expect is what I see on screen is what is happening on the printer. Because when I proof these colors and I tell it to give me the gamut warning, and I don't see the gamut warning happening in massive ways, in massive detail, what would happen is this massive gray would come out over it. Now, if you take a look at a different video I've got on YouTube where I go through this idea of recalibrating our expectations on color, I use this exact same image, and we can see in the original Pro Photo color space, there's a lot of color in that blue that just simply doesn't exist in these other color spaces. So this image has already been massively compressed on its color. I still get a little bit of detail coming through as it relates to the nuances of the color, the nuances of the waves and things like that. So yes, that still comes through, but it is already massively compressed from its original. So what I'm seeing here, I'm not surprised by, but this is just a way to look at it and say, hey, make sure you do this. If you're getting weird results especially, make sure you do this and let's see exactly where the problems are happening. All right, so it turns out that I'm not having any problems on this particular one at all. Let's see if I have any problems on this one. So I'm going to verify that my proof setup is still the same for this image. Nope. So we're going to go down here to, or up here, wherever we are, textile, and we're going to go perceptual. And then we're going to do our gamut warning. Look at all those greens, those areas in the greens. Those colors are reproducible in the RGB, the sRGB, but they are not reproducible on this machine. But when I was over there and looking at the results, I was just like, hey, this is beautiful, this is great. So whatever it did to map those colors, and it chopped off that particular green and it mapped it to a new green on the fly in the print process, it did a pretty good job. And so I was fairly impressed with what I saw there. But here we can see those greens, which, let's face it, greens are the hardest things, the hardest colors for printers to reproduce accurately anyway, especially a CMYK green, a CMYK printer. Really difficult for those to reproduce those with complete accuracy. So I'm not surprised with what I'm seeing here, but the blues, the subtle pinks, the subtle yellows, those are coming in great. All right, so I'm gonna go and get this cooked on and then I'm gonna be done. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, happy shooting. All right, it is done cooking on. Oh, and that looks good, except for it just wasn't pressured enough or something. This is something that really gets me with these variables. You really want to dial it in, and then hopefully you can leave it there. Let me show you, if I can, exactly what I'm talking about. And actually, I'm going to turn off the machine first so it can start cooling down. But right in here, hopefully you can see there's a little bit of mottling in the coloration. That lighter tonality mottling should not be there. It should be more like what we have down here, which is just gorgeous rich blues. And all these things up in here, even this, that is the water, so I expect that. But all these other items up here, then it just gets to this mottled tonality. It's disgusting. And the reason it did that was because on this tensioner here, I screwed it back down to tighten it up. I just didn't tighten it enough because if you'll recall, I did the items with the pillow. And so I just didn't tighten it enough, and that caused this item to not be pressured enough, so it did not get a good impression. You need enough pressure to make it work. So I guess I'll have to wait, because I'm out of blanks, I'll have to wait to get my final piece of that image. And I can see this being used once again in class as an example, so I can get that image, and I'm not gonna then just waste pieces. All right, so long for now.